the fact that True Carroll has decided to take him to 3 different jobs along with him tells you how highly he speaks of him. And the fact that he was going to probably take him to USC as well for a 4th job in about 7-8 years speaks volumes about what he thinks of Ray Thomas. And so, as respected as True Carroll is, that speaks volumes to what Ray Thomas and how he is perceived as well, not only by True Carroll, but the coaching staff at Kansas State and by the players in the locker room.
Hello and welcome into another edition of 3Ma. I'm John Kurtz, joined by Derek Young and Cole Manbeck. We'll talk plenty of football today. Unfortunately, K-State loses pretty key cog in the machine in the Chris Kleiman era in Coach Tremaine Carroll, who has been the head strength coach of the Wildcats for a while now. This is a blow. He's headed to USC, but K-State has an immediate succession plan, and I think that we are all pretty on board with that. So at least that part. Calls for a toast from our friends at Holiday Distillery. You can get the Ben Holiday bottled in bond bourbon. You can get the 360 vodka, whatever it is that you prefer for the lake coming up, for sitting out on your porch, for watching the NBA playoffs. If you are somebody who is partaking in that, whatever it might be, make sure you have some Ben Holiday bottled in bond bourbon or some 360 vodka on hand. Now, I've got to say, I feel a little bit guilty that Tremaine Carroll is leaving to go to USC, because yesterday we were kicking around I guess it was Tuesday. We were kicking around okay, are we doing a show Wednesday? Are we doing a show Thursday? Nothing has really happened. And I said, well, why not? Let's just wait until Thursday and we'll see if something happens, instead of just putting a show out Wednesday thinking surely something will happen this week, thinking maybe basketball landing a player, something positive. And instead, something did happen. It unfortunately was losing an all-star strength coach to Lincoln Riley in USC. So that one's on me, guys. I apologize.
Well, thank you for being accountable.
Yeah, what did you know, John? Did you have insights into this and just not share it with us? Because we were all kind of blindsided.
The razor was blowing up. I was getting texts, but I didn't feel I couldn't share. I was sworn to secrecy. I couldn't share it. No, look, I had no inside info. This one, I don't know that anybody really had info. We all found out from a Pete Thamel tweet, right? That just sort of came out of nowhere. Now, I guess we can say, we had requested True on the show, going back a couple of weeks, and that speaking of kicking the can down the road, that never came to fruition. And I guess maybe now we know why.
Yeah, I wonder if those two things were connected now, looking back on it, because I know when we initially asked, he said something about maybe in a week or two. I think he was just because I'll be gone maybe, but won't have to do it.
Yeah, which, they were making a big deal about the 23-mile-an-hour club and pushed all the right things, pushing good things out of what the strength program has done. And we also thought, well, they just crushed it at the combine, all the K-State prospects that were there. So, that's a testament to the job that he's done too. So this would be a great interview for the offseason. And apparently USC thought True's been doing some great work as well.
This doesn't come at a bad time for Kansas State. You'd rather it be now than a few months ago. So the timing is kind of convenient. My only question is because I'm not well versed on all things USC, but I don't understand why they were in the business of hiring one at this point of the calendar either.
It's that's a really good question. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. It's also interesting because isn't Lincoln Riley pretty good friends with Chris Kleiman?
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
Yeah. So
doesn't mean you don't snag their best guys still though.
Whatever, backstabber Lincoln Riley. So my question was, I wouldn't want to follow Lincoln Riley and go to USC, but John brought up on the Discord the weather in LA and getting a big raise and all that. So
I would, but it's Cole. Come on, man. I get it. I know, people in Kansas don't love LA, whatever. But if you got money, if you're making a lot of money, living in LA is pretty great. It's also, I hate to say it, I'm Big 12 to the core, but it's the big leagues. It's a big time job in the Big 10. Lincoln Riley, I'm with you. Leave something to be desired these days, even if he's having a nice offseason. Weather, money, USC, tradition of USC, Big Ten. Like, I love K-State, dude, but this, of course, this is a job that Tremaine Carroll is going to take.
For me, it's probably more so that it's USC than it's Big Ten or LA. I mean, USC had the prestige and the cachet, even without the Big Ten moniker attached to it. So, you can, have a chance to be a part of maybe reviving the heartbeat that was at one time USC. I mean, we're all about the same age. When we grew up, it was Pete Carroll, USC, rocking college football to the core there for a good, 5-year, 6-year run.
Except when they came to Manhattan. Except when K-State went to the Coliseum.
Yeah. What's interesting about Tremaine Carroll, guys, is like you don't often hear about the strength and conditioning coach that much. And in K-State circles over the last few years, he's been such a vital piece to this program that he's become a very prominent figure. The fan base knows a lot about True Carroll and the impact that he has had. I mean, DY, he was brought in to change the culture in 2021. K-State, Chris Kleiman identified major culture issues in the program after the pandemic season in 2020, and they had that mass exodus of players, and he wanted to identify somebody who's going to be spending a ton of time with the roster and the players and in that locker room who could bring this team together. And, I mean, that was True Carroll. I mean, he had a huge, massive impact, not only on the strength and conditioning program, we can talk about that and how much it's been elevated, but just on uniting this locker room and bringing everybody together.
Yeah, I think that's almost the allure of working for Chris Kleiman. I think that's why so many people like to do it. If you do your job the way that he wants you to do it, if you do it the right way, if you're extremely successful, if you impact winning, if you're terrific at what you do, he's going to let the world know. And for better or worse, that does make you appealing to maybe the outside world, as we're seeing in this example with Tremaine Carroll. But that's also why people are like, yeah, I'll go work for Chris Kleiman. I mean, if I'm doing my job, he's going to pump me up and let people know that I'm doing a hell of a job. For how long did he say that Connor Riley was the best offensive line coach in America? Now Connor Riley got an NFL gig to be an offensive line coach. So if you do what you're supposed to do under Chris Kleiman, he will give you the appropriate praise. And I think a lot of guys appreciate that. And yeah, sometimes it leads them to other opportunities, but you're probably have a good Rolodex of potential replacements. And in this case, and I know we're going to get into it, you just take who's the guy that's been Coach Tremaine Carroll's protege since 2019, not even 2021 at K-State. He was with Tremaine Carroll at USF and his prior stops as well. So he knows exactly what it's supposed to look like, knows exactly how to accomplish something. But we'll get into it. But I don't think you could find probably a better replacement if you're Kansas State, because he's probably going to be very similar to what Tremaine Carroll brought to the table.
I feel like True definitely, I mean, he deserves his flowers for the way he's really transformed the program in a lot of ways. And I think what I wonder, it would be fascinating to know behind the scenes how all of this went down and when first contact was made with him, because I'm reading a little bit here about what happened at USC. There's an article from, this was late April 30th, about Lincoln Riley parting ways with Benny Wiley, who was their former strength coach, who was apparently beloved, and he was with Lincoln at Oklahoma and USC, so he'd been with him for a long time. A lot of media members were taken to Twitter to talk about like how much they loved and appreciated him. Caleb Williams had spoke at length on podcasts before about how much he loved the guy and how helpful he was. So I guess there had been some speculation that it was something like off the field, but reporters were saying, the sources were all telling them it was something football related, but everybody was curious about the timing. And I guess that does make me wonder if it's like hey, they started poking around and figured out that they could be able to get somebody as highly respected as Tremaine Carroll. And, if Lincoln Riley's considering that an upgrade over a guy that he's had with him since 2018 at Oklahoma, and you think about all the NFL talent that they have churned out since then, and then obviously coming to USC and making a big impact on a guy like Caleb Williams, who goes number 1 overall, that's pretty damn high praise for what True did here.
The NFL draft results kind of speak for itself too. I mean, some of it's Chris Kleiman and really recruiting better players and more athletic players too, guys that have a much better ability and are more athletic and kind of can rip up the testing and measurables a lot more than what we were accustomed to seeing towards what was 16, 17, 18. It's probably a combination of recruiting a better kind of athlete and having a really good strength and conditioning program.
Well, let's highlight some of the things he did. I mean, John, you mentioned it. I mean, there was the Q&A done with D. Scott Fritchen in early April at KStateSports.com, where he had an interview with True Carroll. And True had said when they got here in 2021, when he got here as a strength coach, there were only 4 guys on the roster that could run over 20 miles per hour. And they started tracking that with the catapult data. Now the majority of the roster, according to Carroll, runs over 20 miles per hour. 30 free players on the team run over 21 miles per hour. 6 eclipse 22 miles per hour. And they had to create a new group this year of the 23 mile per hour club. And as we've talked about before, there's 4 guys in that: Avery Johnson, VJ Payne, Dylan Edwards, and corner Donovan McIntosh, who's 6'3", even more impressive that he reached the 23 mile per hour club. So really elevated the speed, the strength component. You look at a guy like Jacob Parrish, guys. I mean, he came in at 175 pounds out of high school, and he ran 21 miles per hour. And at the NFL Combine, he runs a 4.35 40 at 200 pounds. So they jumped his weight up to 25 pounds, 30 pounds or so, and he's still hitting a 4.35 40. He eclipsed 22 miles per hour after adding all that muscle. You guys mentioned some of the Combine stuff. I mean, Marquise Siegel runs the fastest time out of all safeties at the NFL Combine. Just mentioned Parrish's numbers. I mean, both Parrish and Siegel were top 15 in the 40 overall at players that ran at the Combine. Who thought DJ Giddens was going to run a 4.43 40 at the Combine? I mean, I didn't. I thought he was a 4.5, 4.6 guy, but he's the 7th fastest 40 time out of 24 running backs who ran the 40 at the Combine. Players, we saw Deuce Vaughn and others, they come back to K-State to work out with the strength and conditioning staff, and True Carroll being a part of that, and obviously Ray Thomas as well. I mean, these guys are very respected, really good at what they do, and I think that speaks volumes. I mean, I think it was True Carroll that was the first guy Chris Kleiman hugged after, the field goal to win the Big 12 championship after Sentner banged it through. I mean, he's a beloved guy in that locker room, and, it's a blow to K-State, but to DY's point, they got a guy ready in the wings who was with True Carroll at Arkansas, was with him at South Florida, was with him at K-State the last 4+ years. So he's been learning from the kind of his mentor and is the protege here that you feel pretty good about that.
Yeah, and I know you guys alluded to this a little bit, but just in talking about the culture that the program has overall, I mean, a lot of people maybe don't realize how much of an impact the strength coach has on that, how much he is the guy setting the culture in the offseason. You think about guys like Brendan Mott that work their way up from being just a skinny kid to a Big 12 defensive lineman of the year by the end of his time there. Getting those guys to the program in addition to just the ones who are starring at the Combine and getting drafted. I mean, all that is stemming from him. And I think you're right. It's very poignant that he was the guy that Kleiman went to after winning the Big 12 championship, because he really did. He took the program. I would give him, I don't know what percentage, a large chunk of the credit for elevating the program from, 7-5 kind of thing in 19, 20, 21. Obviously, we don't count the COVID year, Cole, so I'm not counting that. From elevating it to that to every single year, you're being picked to go to the Big 12 championship game and winning one of those Big 12 titles. Like he's a massive, massive part of that. So, yeah, I think it's all fair to relate a lot of that back to him. The good news is, like you guys said, his protege is taking the job. And I think that is big. We're going to talk about the process to make that happen and what that means moving forward. But, we have to tell you about our friends at Home Field Apparel. Maybe Coach True has some K-State Home Field Apparel he'll be taking with him to LA. We'll see. You could get some USC stuff, or you could celebrate Cody Campbell, I assume is what DY is doing with his Texas Tech shirt today.
Yep. You got it.
Okay. It's got the Masked Raider. Nice Wreckham. That's a pretty solid shirt. Is there anything else on there other than just the...
Nope.
Okay. All right. Well, would you like to tell everybody why you're repping Cody Campbell today?
Because hopefully he's going to save the Big 12 by being the co-chair of the whatever this commission. I don't know if this commission is going to have any teeth to it, but, we'll see.
he and Nick Saban are going to go try and get a bunch of college football legislation done through Congress, I suppose, and through the president. We'll see. We'll see. But hey, it is nice the Big 12 has some representation on that. It's not a Big 10 guy with Nick Saban. It's Cody Campbell, multi-billionaire. Just sold some company for $4 billion the other day. Must be nice. Well, Cole's got the K-State home field apparel on, so good job there.
My favorite home field shirt, actually, the Big 8 1977 basketball champ shirt. I love this shirt. Super comfortable, but love the design too.
Well, go get it at homefieldapparel.com and use promo code 3MA24 for 15% off your first order. That's promo code 3MA24 for 15% off your first order, and we're back in just a moment.
Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your #1 source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com.
Success in real estate takes more than vision. It takes the right financial partner. When someone takes something rundown and turns it into something great, that's called a comeback story. Like Bryan Group. They take distressed properties here in KC, completely rework them, and then turn them into valuable real estate. But that kind of work needs the right bank behind it. Enter Emprise Bank. They're not about cookie-cutter loans. They saw Bryan Group's vision, backed them, and now they're making big moves in Kansas City real estate. Talk about your partner in possible. Emprise doesn't do one-size-fits-all financing. They invest in potential and back growth. Visit emprisebank.com/KC to learn more. Emprise Bank. Member FDIC. Equal housing lender.
It's playoff time, and if you're still just watching games, then you're missing out. With Pick 6 from DraftKings, you can turn your hoops knowledge into real cash. Just make your picks, track your score, and if you hit all 6, you're looking at bigger payouts than Prize Picks flex plays. Nobody's dropping better payouts than Pick 6. Hit 6 picks, and that's 25 times your cash. And if you beat your competitor, you could be looking at a 500 times bag in your pocket. And right now, new customers get $50 in bonus picks with just a $5 entry. The playoffs are on, so why not take a shot at making a little money while you're watching? Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app right now and use code KCSN. That's code KCSN to play $5 and get $50 in bonus picks. Better payouts, bigger wins, only on Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. One per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 bonus picks that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. Terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
Speaking of Cody Campbell, trying to save all that real quick here. Did you guys see Jamie Pollard's comments the other day? Athletic director at Iowa State.
Yeah,
he was very candid when doing a kind of just a random YouTube interview. Not really a sports guy that he was doing the interview with, but I think that's probably where some of the candid nature of his comments came out, because he was like explaining it to maybe a non-sports fan audience. But he was talking about, how look. We got to pay $20 million to rev share, and that's what you have to do if you want to stay at the top level of college athletics. We don't have that money. We're eating up our surplus that we had developed because we had to dip into it during COVID, and we probably will need either a subsidy from the university or, some schools, he pointed out, like Virginia Tech has raised a student fee where the students will pay for a good chunk of that. And I think, K-State and a bunch of schools in the Big 12 are going to be in a really, really similar boat as far as that is concerned. And the thing that I think really drew a lot of headlines was the fact that Jamie Pollard was like, look, we got to have a conversation. Either we're going to need some help or we could go be Northern Iowa. Like that's basically the reality. So I know everybody's like, at this point, we're talking mostly football and getting excited about, what's happening between the lines and on the roster and all that stuff. But the big picture stuff here it's kind of sobering. And, for anybody who cringes at like private equity headlines coming into the Big 12 and the Big 12 flirting with private equity or private capital, like that is why your choices could potentially be that or become Northern Iowa. So take your pick.
absolutely. I tend to think that some of these schools probably have enough banked up where they can figure out, kind of, crawl and kind of figure out how to be able to do this for a year or two, right? Is what I'm saying. I think a lot of these schools probably have it in them to get by with that, the non-Big Ten and SEC schools, so to speak. Beyond that, it probably gets a little hairy, but I think we're going to get another transformative time in the near future of at least college football, where it might be, but college athletics in general. I think that there's another big shift coming. I don't know when that thing's going to come, but I don't think it's too far down the line. So I think you got to figure out a way to hang on for like 4 or 5 years.
Well, I mean, hopefully Cody Campbell is a part of that discussion. I mean, you hope that in the next few years that college football transforms again, but in a good way for everybody all involved, and the Greg Sankeys of the world are kicked out of the sport because they're awful for college sports. I mean, SEC commissioner, like, these people aren't looking out. They're just looking out for their own financial well-being and their conference, but not the health of the overall sport and of college sports in general. And so you got to get people like that out of it and get people with reasonable thoughts that, are looking out for the best interests of everybody involved, because that's what makes college football and college athletics so great. Is you have fan bases across the country that care and are invested, and you got 60,000 people going to Iowa State games in Ames, Iowa, and you got a packed, sold-out stadium in Manhattan, Kansas, weekend and week out with 50,000+ there. So hopefully a guy like Cody Campbell and Nick Saban, who I think actually does have, once college football and the overall health of the sport, he recognizes the importance of that. Hopefully those guys can come up with some solutions, because even this revenue sharing model, it's not something that is sustainable for schools in the Big 12, schools like K-State that have to just keep figuring out ways to fund $20+ million a year, and that number only going up in the future years, as Gene Taylor said on the pod with us, a month or two ago.
I think my only pushback on it, that would be, I would agree, because Greg Sankey's looking out for him in the SEC. I get it, and that's totally true. But my argument would be that the most predatory part of that, all of the stuff and how we got here, is probably the television execs.
Well, it's definitely TV, and I'm with you, Cole. I mean, I don't like Greg Sankey at all. Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti, who's the commissioner of the Big Ten, are definitely making decisions that are good for them. I mean, hell, they've had their own summit, basically, where they're meeting among each other to figure out how they're going to lead this forward. The next iteration of the college football playoff, it's literally written into the language of the contract of everything, like they will be the ones making decisions. That's not great. Their job description, though, is just to serve their conference and do what's best for their conference. The real problem here has been just that there's never been great leadership from the NCAA, the structure of everything. I mean, there was basically like a power vacuum, and it was when the NCAA started losing all of its teeth on everything, and it was just sucked up by the SEC and Big Ten, taking in all the schools that they did, killing the Pac-12, and now we're here. I don't know if you can put the toothpaste back in the tube on that, but it is a nice start, at least, if a Big 12 guy is going to be involved in trying to shape some of this next wave.
Yeah, the SEC and Big Ten definitely assumed those powers and influences, and basically to the point where they could tower over the sport, and that obviously involved a realignment. But at the end of the day, it was the television networks, whether it be ESPN or Fox, that granted those two leagues the opportunity to do so.
Yeah. I just hope reasonable, like-minded folks get in a room at some point and fix where we're at. But it's fair to call that out. College football has needed a commissioner for a long time, and if you had a commissioner and a sole voice that kind of was in the leadership position that everybody reported up to and was looking out in the best interest of the sport overall, probably be in a different spot, and maybe it'll get to that point.
NCAA head in the sand for about 20 years did not help.
Yeah. I've said this a dozen times with you guys before, like, the dream scenario with me is, years down the road, everybody that's reasonable minded and loves the sport gets back in a room and they're like, what are we doing with these conferences? And it probably won't happen because of the dollars that are at stake. But, would love, I saw one of the bullet points in that Cody Campbell thing was reorganize conferences, John, which, I don't know what all that entails, but my thought was, let's go back to geographic conferences.
If you go back to now, that makes a lot of sense, and maybe there's divisions of the sort. But the thing is, you go back to where it was. Even though we enjoyed it in the 90s, early 2000s, you're talking about putting much less money in every school's hand.
Maybe I think the
thing. I think you need to pull. I do think you need to pull media rights, like he's suggesting, but to do it in 6 or 7 different conferences, I don't think is.
Well, no, but here's the. I think if there's reorg like that in conferences, what you would have is so. DY, I think it was you said earlier, like there's going to be a next iteration of this. Everybody points toward 2030 because you're going to have TV contracts coming up for a couple of the leagues, Big 12 included. I believe it's Big 12 and SEC. It's one of the big Power 2 has their deal coming up. Anyway, that's when people think reorganization will happen. The way that you could get the pitch that is being made from some people who are, people hear Super League and freak out a little bit, doesn't mean that it has to be Big 10 and SEC combining as a Super League. Super League, a lot of these proposals include like 60 or 70 teams, and the thought is, hey, the NFL model is everybody pools their media rights together, you sell it to multiple different TV networks, and you make more money that way. There are people who claim that have these Super League proposals that if you did that with college football, everybody pools their media rights. Then you would structure it into geographic conferences. Everybody makes more money. And they also, one of the parts of this that, again, people may not like, but teams will get extra money based on brand and based on performance. Kind of what you're seeing in the ACC right now. That's become something that may be more in vogue, like a performance incentive, a brand incentive. So everybody pulls their money together. We get geographic conferences that make sense. But if you're winning, and if people are watching you on TV, you'll make a higher percentage of all of that money. That, I think, is maybe like a best case scenario if you want to hope for how this winds up turning out, which obviously, K-State's never going to be the most viewed school out there. You could hit performance incentives there. You'll still be at some level of disadvantage, but it hopefully would look a little better than it does today.
I actually think that's one of Cody Campbell's things. Yeah.
That works for me. John, would you like to, you could be a voice of reason in all of this. Obviously with your YouTube show, maybe we need to make you the PR spokesman for
look, Mr. Campbell, my cell phone is, just DM me on Twitter. He seems like a Twitter guy. DM me on Twitter, Mr. Campbell.
Pull together the comprehensive communications plan for him. I think you got some of the talking points figured out there. I think that would be great. And not only that, if you get to geographic conferences, obviously your travel costs decrease too for other sports. So in an era where we're talking about having to come up with extra dollars, you can have a geographic conference that makes sense. And some of your Olympic sports, et cetera, you're able to maintain as a result of having localized conferences, and you can cut down on the travel and the costs associated with that. That all helps.
And we're saying all this like it's like an easy thing to accomplish, and I don't want to turn a blind eye, like the I guess resistance to maybe something like this, and I'm sure John can probably maybe expand or go into greater detail. It basically comes down to, if you're the Big 10 or SEC, you haven't done the last 10 or 15 years just to give it all back.
100%. Like that's the problem. You're asking people in power, like, okay, let's set the scene here. We are in America in 2025, and you're asking people with an incredible amount of power and influence who are doing things to drastically tilt the scales in their favor for their advantage to just relinquish some of that for altruism, the greater good. Now, does that sound like America in 2025 to you? Because it sure doesn't to me. So, yeah, there's the cynical view on all of this. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll tell Minnesota, Purdue, Indiana, Maryland, Vanderbilts of the world that Mississippi State, they're going to get the rug pulled out from them. They're going to get booted from these super leagues because, it's really about the blue blood programs in these leagues that have won national titles that are driving a lot of the revenue. So tell those schools what's going to happen to them too. Maybe they're out of the Big 10 or the SEC, and we'll see a lot of minds shift and their thoughts and their philosophies on the approach at college sports.
Well, what will happen to them more than likely is, I think the ACC has laid out the blueprint for what will happen to them, as opposed to having to kick schools out and deal with the PR nightmare that is. You just put in performance incentives and brand incentives, and they'll make way less money. They'll be much more on like a Big 12 ACC kind of level, but more money will tilt towards the Alabamas, Ohio States of the world, and the rich get richer, and capitalism throughout the sport of college football, basically. Late stage capitalism in college football. So it's a mess, but hopefully that's a step. Hopefully that's a step, getting Cody Campbell there. And I will say, if they can get this done fast, I think they have a chance with the way things are in Congress right now and the powers that be in the country. I think you could. I don't know, man. Somebody's talking them into trying to change, tariffing movies and opening Alcatraz. Why not change the structure of college football? I'm dead serious. Why couldn't that happen right now?
Yeah, I was going to say, not to get into the political weeds or anything of that sort, but just bare bones here is that if you wanted to get something done, there is a certain party that it would be more conducive to maybe what people in the sport think needs to happen. And
it's color of your shirt, DY.
Yes. So as long as they are in power in the House, you have a chance, basically. But if that were to flip, which could happen in 2026 midterms, then it becomes a little bit more challenging.
Yeah.
Look at that home field apparel Texas Tech shirt spurring a nice little 12, 13-minute conversation about college sports and the direction we're heading and a deep dive. Shout out to home field apparel.
So I guess what I'm saying, for maybe some congressional outreach and support that the sport probably needs to get into the next step, you probably need to get something done before November 26th.
Yeah. All right. Well, having said all that, we'll talk about Ray Thomas, K-State's new strength coach, coming up next.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network.
All right. As promised, K-State did immediately, after losing Tremaine Carroll, they immediately promoted Ray Thomas to be the director of strength and conditioning, your head strength coach. He has been, as DY and Cole pointed out, like the protege, the right-hand man for True Carroll, not just during his time at K-State, but all the way back to 2019 at Arkansas and then 2020 at South Florida before arriving in Manhattan. He also spent 2018 at Colorado State, so this is a guy that's been working his way up, and I think I'll let DY and Cole speak to this more because I know you guys have talked to some folks, but somebody who is very widely respected within the program and somebody that I think people feel like is kind of a budding star and was going to get a head strength and conditioning job at some point somewhere. So why not be here and just pass the baton on, and a guy who obviously knows how Coach True was running things. This does seem like about the best case scenario if you're going to lose somebody as important as Coach True.
Absolutely. People think that Coach True is kind of able to instill that culture and get everything done that he wanted because the coaches loved him, the players loved him, he had the respect of everyone in the building, and he worked his butt off. Well, that's you ask around, and people will describe Ray Thomas the same way. The players love him as well. So you're not going to lose that bridge whatsoever. It's still going to be an asset in that way because of the way he can communicate and command a room as well. So I think those are all big things. And other people will say, he's probably been ready for his own strength and conditioning program at the college football level for a couple years. So you're not getting someone that's you got to worry about if they're ready. Everyone you talk to, just about anyone that has kind of run into him will say, no, he's ready. He's probably been ready for 2 or 3 years. I think that's why they gave him the associate title in 2023. Kansas State actually elevated him and gave him a kind of a fancy title 2 years ago, probably to keep him because he might have been getting sought after by other programs. I would imagine that's why you would do such a thing. And I think Coach True had every intention of bringing him, of course, along with him to USC. And obviously he decides against that because he knows he's going to get the nod from Coach Kleiman at Kansas State and stays there. So everything that you when you talk to people, everything that you hear is what you want to hear in a replacement. So I'm not going to say there is zero sting factor here because there's a known commodity with Coach True, but there's a very good chance that you're going to, I don't know if I would say get a reincarnation of Coach True, but someone that can be just as productive and effective.
It was clearly a quick, easy decision, it seemed like, for Chris Kleiman. I mean, the fact that was one of the quicker transitions I've ever seen, where the news comes out from Thamel and K-State's tweeting out
90 seconds. Yeah, 90 seconds. You know what? I bet Coach Kleiman knew that Ray Thomas was going to be his next strength and conditioning coach 2 or 3 years ago.
Yep. Yeah, you mentioned the promotion in 2023 that he got. He's very well liked in the locker room. You don't really worry about a culture slip because he's been very hands-on with these guys and very well received within the locker room. We've heard from former players that played during the era with this staff and with True Carroll and with Ray Thomas. They really like him. So yeah, I'm not too concerned there. Obviously, great at what he does, manages a lot of the day-to-day as well. And to what we said earlier in the show, like it'd be one thing if he was only at K-State with True Carroll, but the fact that True Carroll has decided to take him to 3 different jobs along with him tells you how highly he speaks of him. And the fact that he was going to probably take him to USC as well for a 4th job in about 7-8 years speaks volumes about what he thinks of Ray Thomas. And so, as respected as True Carroll is, that speaks volumes to what Ray Thomas and how he is perceived as well, not only by True Carroll, but the coaching staff at Kansas State and by the players in the locker room. And so I think they're going to be just fine. I like that they made it a quick, easy transition here, and they had a guy waiting in the wings ready to promote. That's what good programs do, is they have somebody right there ready when somebody gets promoted and taken away from you. And so they make the hire quickly, and I think K-State's in good shape there. Still not ideal that you lose a guy like True Carroll, but he was instrumental in helping revitalize K-State football in the Kleiman era. But Ray Thomas will be good for Kansas State, I believe.
Well, shout out to the sports info department, man, for having that release ready to go. That the funny part of it was, you guys in our group chat, the first thing that I saw, because it happened so bang bang, when I just opened up my phone to go look at the text, I just saw the one from K-State that was like, K-State promotes Ray Thomas to director of strength and conditioning. And I was like, oh, And I was like, wait, well, what the hell happened? And then I scrolled up and saw the Thamel tweet, and those had both come across within the span of just minutes of each other. So yeah, that was nice work all the way around. I mean, it just, I don't know, maybe I'm making too much of it, but it's like that when we talk about like Kleiman running a really organized, well-run ship, I mean, it's like that's the type of thing that happens when you've got a really organized, well-run operation. Not everything, like the fact that you keep Ray Thomas when he could have just gone to USC with Tremaine Carroll, that you're able to promote him, and that you're then ready as soon as the news hits, where people will be disappointed. You're ready to say right away, hey, we've got our next guy. It's signed, sealed, and delivered, and he's the right-hand man. They have the messaging ready to go on that. Like, this has been the guy behind the guy at K-State. So
I think maybe I'm wrong on this, because you guys probably are at least John and both of you guys, but it also to me is a reflection of that. It was probably a very smooth and exit by Coach True, like amicable, like they were probably doing things in a very professional way, like getting their ducks in a row of how they wanted to do this. And it probably worked well together on how that would work when they would start at USC, when he would leave at Kansas State, announcement and everything. I think Coach True would probably have to be connected and involved in some way to make it this seamless of a transition as well. And obviously with Ray Thomas on board, it probably makes it a little bit easier since it's an internal promotion as well.
Yeah. And Chris Kleiman likes to promote from within. I mean, we've seen that. Obviously, Matt Wells promoted offensive coordinator. Brian LePack promoted to offensive line coach, and I loved those promotions. There are times where I'd like to see him, go the external hire route and bring in some new blood. But when it comes to LePack, Wells, and Ray Thomas, I'm all in on all of those promotions.
Yeah, and to that end, Cole, I mean, Jerome Tang said he wanted to follow the Houston model. Well, the Houston model, literally, we just had Kelvin Sampson talking, a couple of weeks ago, about how he always, that's what he wants to do. He loses somebody, he's going to hire from within. And he wants that program being strong enough with guys all the way up from his GAs and student assistants to be just a pipeline that funnels people up through. And, you look at his bench, he's got Hollis Price there, who played for him at Oklahoma in the early 2000s. Like, there is something to be said for that being a really well-run program when you're doing that. I am with you. I think Kleiman sometimes can be that way to a fault, and we would like to see him branch out perhaps a little bit more at times. But I do think it's the sign of a pretty well-run program when you're able to do that.
He got it, and he adapted and adjusted and put someone exclusively at a GM spot in a relative quick manner too. They've always said that between him and Coach True and Scott Troush, the nutrition, that they've really been ahead of the game in the sports science stuff. And that's people outside of Kansas State saying that, actually. So, that's probably one thing he doesn't get enough credit, is staying up to speed, adapting and adjusting on the fly, and usually in a pretty rapid manner. And doing it the GM thing too, it's probably saved the roster the last couple of seasons, because if you're not organized or collected in that type of manner, even especially being at a Big 12 or ACC school, you can get plucked, pretty easily. And I think we've seen that other teams in the league and in the ACC, even in the Big 10 and SEC, they've had their rosters kind of ravaged at times, guys that they want to keep. And it's not like Kansas State doesn't have a bunch of guys that other teams would want. They do, but they've been keeping them.
I wanted to circle back just real quick. I saw a tweet from Ryan Wallace of the KCSN Verbal Commits pod yesterday that, you had a great tweet. I thought a great point that, reminded me of what we talked about 2 or 3 weeks ago, actually, about Tremaine Carroll and spring ball. But, to show how highly, or illustrate how highly Chris Kleiman thinks of his strength and conditioning staff, I mean, he consulted with Tremaine Carroll on how they were going to run spring practices and actually wanted his players to spend more time with the strength and conditioning staff and cut down on some of the actual practice time in itself to just get these guys more physically ready, because that's how much he entrusts and empowers those guys to do their jobs, is to actually cut down on participation on the football field and more time in the weight room and doing conditioning work. And so I thought that was a nice point by Ryan in terms of, just the value at what Chris Kleiman places in the strength and conditioning staff here and the trust that he has in them.
Yeah, agreed. Very good point. Before we get out of here, you guys care to comment on some of these post-spring top 25s that we're seeing? I'm curious where this will land with the group, because are you on the side of you want the expectations or you don't want the expectations? I've seen K-State as high as top 15. Joel Klatt, for instance, I guess he's got K-State at 16, where he has a run of, I don't know, this seems almost just like, I think Joel Klatt's very good, but this seems like this token, like, I'm going to include some Big 12 teams, so I'm going to send them from 14 through 17, BYU, Arizona State, K-State, Iowa State. But then you have guys like, I think both Andy Staples, DY, we're going to need to have a chat, because I think both Andy Staples and Ari Wasserman left K-State completely out of the top 25. Most, I would say, seem to have K-State in the 15 to 20 range. So your thoughts on where the national expectations seem to be for the Cats right now?
In terms of wanting or not wanting expectation, this team, I think, is they're veteran and mature enough where that shouldn't matter. And there shouldn't be like mounting pressure of like, you can't handle this. So I don't think that, I don't really care one way or another if they don't have it. The chip on their shoulder thing, I think you can get that maybe from a young team that's a little bit hungry and unproven, and they maybe need that external motivation. This should not be a team that needs that. And if it is, then they're not made of the right shit, right? So that's the way I think about that. In terms of these top 25 lists, I'm not going to crucify anyone to how they think. It's their own freaking thoughts, right? But what I have a hard time crossing is everyone had Kansas State in the preseason top 25 last year, and now basically they should be a world's better team, I think. And they have holes just like everyone else. But basically, all the meaningful contributors from last year's team that people thought was a top 25 team are back, and now they're not top 25. So I have a hard time squaring those two things. When you thought they were top 25 last year, then you should think that they're top 25 this year. And then some will say, well, if you go and look, they're 7th or 8th in returning production. Well, they were pretty bad in returning production last year and didn't change anyone's mind. So I guess I don't see a lot of the logic or understanding of it to not have them in the top 25 personally.
DY, why do all the On3 national polls suck ass?
Well, maybe it's good, Cole. Maybe they're trying to set the expectation bar low,
Yeah, I mean, you had J.D. Pickles' poll, too, that didn't have K-State in it. I think it was Andy Staples at
okay. That's who it was. Maybe I just took out Ari Wasserman for no reason.
Well, I'm sure he wouldn't have K-State ranked either. Oh, don't worry, John. He probably doesn't have K-State ranked as well. Yeah, I think it was Andy Staples. That the one that's weird to me, DY, is, and I know you're in a position where you really can't comment here specifically, but it was weird to me. Andy Staples was like the biggest cheerleader at K-State football last year with Avery Johnson and everything. And then he didn't even have him not only in his top 25, he didn't have him in his top 30.
Right. I'm just confused. If you really thought highly of Kansas State last year, they got everyone back that did something last year, essentially.
Well, he was talking about Avery as a dark horse Heisman candidate last year. Did he disappoint that much to where, like,
I guess there seems to be people that are less high on Kansas State this year than they were last year, so they must be out on some of the guys that are coming back. Look, if you want to pinpoint, you could probably pinpoint 3 to 5 players in the Big 12 that are going to be substantially better than they were a year ago and just maybe take off. He's in that 3 to 5 players. So I don't really understand it either, but I guess for them, if I'm going to try to see it their way, maybe say, Sam Levitt's back at Arizona State. They're not as good as them. BYU, they're not as. I think BYU is going to come back crashing down to earth a little bit, but they have a lot of people back. So BYU, Arizona State, Iowa State thing, I also don't really get because yes, you have Rocco Bet back, but he kind of regressed in year 2 last year, and they lost all of his playmakers around him. So I'm not as high on Iowa State as others. Texas Tech, I get you can fall in love because they probably are by far, maybe even the most talented team in the Big 12 considering what they brought in. But how does that work? I think more than 50% of the cases where we see teams try to do what Texas Tech is doing, it kind of craters. That doesn't mean it'll crater on Texas Tech, but it means there's definite risk of that. Colorado should take a step back.
Well, unless you are, the Texas Tech thing is interesting because Andy Staples had them at number 11. So, that's too rich for my blood. I acknowledge that they had the number 1 portal class in the country. They are immensely talented.
They still have a quarterback, in my opinion.
Yeah, quarterback ceiling you wonder about. Coach ceiling you wonder about. I mean, Joey McGuire is a likable guy, but, you got to actually go do it before I can believe in that. It can be a little clunky. If you're Ohio State, who I think everybody's like, okay, they had the best portal haul last year, obviously. You can win a national championship, but Ole Miss went for broke in the portal last year, and that was, kind of shaky. They didn't make the playoffs, so it's not a guarantee you got.
So Ohio State's portal haul, which was really good, was still only 3 or 4 guys. It was Will Howard, Caleb Downs, Quinshon Judkins. Was there anybody else?
Yeah, so you're integrating less bodies because the more people that you're trying to integrate there, the more things can go wrong, and you got to think about locker room chemistry. And Texas Tech is really fascinating because they basically tried to do, Cody Campbell and Texas Tech have talked about this. Their strategy was basically the same thing Jerome Tang tried to do last year. Hey, we've got this window, or we can still spend freely. It's not revenue sharing capped yet. So let's go spend. And the articles have come out that they're in that club of a $40 million roster this year for football. So they were like, we're going to go spend $40 million on a roster and see what can happen. Well, we got the chance.
There's 2 teams I'm clearly higher on than everyone else. One of them is K-State, and the other one's Baylor.
I like Baylor.
Yeah, I'll be interested in Baylor with Sawyer Robertson. He's getting a lot of love as a top 10 quarterback. And
fantastic towards the end of the season.
Yeah, Texas Tech, the concerning red flags for me would be one, how much are they betting these guys that they're bringing in? Because they just took Micah Hudson back. I don't think I fully understand that one. He's a talented guy, but I don't know there. That one would concern me. And then you spend all this money, guys, on a roster, and your quarterback's still Baron Morton. So, you didn't address the elephant in the room, which is an injury-prone quarterback who really hasn't been that good even when he's healthy. So, you can have all these Lamborghinis surrounding him, but, if you got that in the garage, that's running the show.
Well, I'm gonna play a little game with you here, Cole, because I agree with you. I have always been very hard on Baron Morton. I do not believe in him as
He's got arm. I will say he's got arm talent. But
if we
Utah's another team that'll probably be back too.
I am very high on Utah.
Yeah.
But for Baron Morton, okay, Cole, would you rather have a quarterback who is, let's see, 58% completion, 2,700 yards, 25 TDs, 10 picks, or would you rather have 3,335 yards, 27 TDs, 8 picks on 63% completion percentage?
Has he ever done that in one season though?
That was last year.
Yeah, well, I'm surprised.
His was last year are better than you think. So that, of course, number one was Avery Johnson. Number two was Baron Morton.
Baron Morton.
Yeah, Baron Morton did that as like a 24-year-old, and Avery did that as a 19-year-old.
Yeah, very true. Baron Morton's been around the block. Yeah.
I guess I did not realize Baron Morton played enough games last year to do that.
Yeah, me either.
So
I think he got knocked out of the TCU game. I'm not sure that he missed much other time last year. But yeah, he did in some ways take a big step forward last year.
Yeah, looks like he took advantage of Oklahoma State and West Virginia at the end of the year to really lit them up. So,
yeah. Look, I'm with you. I think he is the question mark. I did a list on the YouTube channel of most pressured. I put them like most pressure on guy. To me, he's like the number one. I guess I said most important, but it was in this like manner of like he's got a lot of pressure on him because you're right. He's got a bunch of Lambos around him. Can he be the guy to drive them to where they need to go?
I think Sam Levitt's got a lot of pressure on him because his expectations and popularity is through the roof right now. And I wonder what it looks like without Cam Scatterby.
Totally fair question. I was making that point to someone on the Discord the other day that Cam Scatterby was literally 40% of their offensive production and is now gone. And I mean, look, Levitt was great and made some plays and kind of got them jump-started when Scatterby was getting shut down early in that Texas game. But if you watch how that Texas game unfolded, it turned into just a Herculean effort from Cam Scatterby. Like, that's a big loss. And Arizona State was not an overly talented roster already. They only had one guy drafted, which was Cam Scatterby. They were picked last in the Big 12 for a reason. Nobody was looking at the roster like, hey, they're really talented. Jordan Tyson's great. I mean, I would kill for a receiver like Jordan Tyson. But, yeah, I think it's fair to raise him. And it's a 34-year-old head coach dealing with expectations for the first time.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. John, I do have to say on the Avery-Morton comparison, though, we do have to throw in that Avery ran for over 600 rushing yards and Baron Morton had negative 22. Because he can't move, so that's not part of his game, and he takes a lot of sacks. So but I was very surprised by the passing numbers that you threw out there. So I didn't realize he had that good of numbers.
I will make the Utah point. Nobody seems to really be on Utah right now. They're gonna have a defense because that's what they do. They always have a defense. They've just been decimated by terrible quarterback play and injuries the last few years. Devin Dampier. There's an injury risk because he runs a lot. I mean, he does a lot of his damage on the ground, and he is not a polished passer, but he is certainly a capable passer. But they brought him and his offensive coordinator, so that seems to be, to me, something that would mitigate the risk of a transition there. I don't know. I still feel like this could be a big bump up for Utah. Their problem is they put too much faith in Cam Rising last year.
Yeah, I think Utah's going to be better. I think Baylor is going to be a threat. I think K-State is a threat.
How do you feel about TCU?
I'm never sure on TCU. They just kind of seem there the last few years. I kind of tried to think about what worked so well in that first year they got into the national title game to see if they can even replicate anything similar to that. And I'm not sure, but Josh Hoover keeps getting better, even though I hated him at one point.
Like he's really good, and they were 8-4 too last year. I mean, so like,
yeah, that's a good dark horse call out. Here's a weird one because every time you count this guy out, he does well. What about Gundy?
I mean, and I don't know. They seem to be actually making more of an effort in NIL in the portal now. We'll see. Cole, sorry, we trampled your TCU thoughts.
Oh no, I didn't really have necessarily TCU thoughts. I was going to say that I'm terrified of the 2-game stretch at the end of November with at Oklahoma State and at Utah. Only because like Oklahoma State's roster doesn't really scare me, but obviously K-State has struggled no matter what the talent is in Stillwater. And then at Utah on November 22nd, back-to-back on the heels of a road trip the week before and playing in altitude and maybe cold weather. And November 22nd, like against the Utah team, we'll know at that point, like if they've kind of folded up or if they're having a really good season. John mentioned injury risk to Dampier, so maybe there could be advantageous moments of playing him late in the year. Maybe they're banged up as well, and they do tend to get their quarterbacks banged up. So we'll see. But I think K-State's schedule, and we'll have plenty of pods that break down the schedule and break down the position groups and offense, defense, and go in depth on K-State football and preview the season. And I'll somehow still have them going 10-2 or 11-1. But when I look at the schedule right now, I think it's a really hard schedule for K-State because I think a Baylor on the road is going to be a hard game. I think a KU on the road, even though they're losing a lot in their new stadium or half new stadium, is going to be a really hard game based off the way the last 2 years have went against the Jayhawks. And then at Oklahoma State, at Utah, like the road games to me are hard. And then we obviously Ireland and the travel and look at there, going to Arizona in September when it's going to be really hot. I don't think Arizona's going to be very good, but the road games are very challenging.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. Another team, and I know I touched on it barely, but just wanted to get through it. I'm not trying to take anything away from what BYU did last year. It was a great year. It just feels like they had a lot go their way to have a great year.
Yeah, BYU, I think, is a prime regression candidate. And some of that is how much do you believe in Jake Retzloff getting better?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think BYU and Arizona State are probably, in Colorado, obviously, are the regression candidates.
Yeah, Colorado. I don't know what to think about Colorado.
I think Coach Prime showed that he's a better coach than maybe some of us give him credit for, myself included. But I think they might be in for a rough season. They might be back in 26, but I don't think 25 is going to be kind to them.
I think what makes K-State's schedule hard is just 6 games away from home. In a year that you were going to have 7, and some of the travel that comes with that, and then we've talked about it already. But Army, being
the first month, just not being able to get in a routine. Right, you play overseas, you play on a Friday, you play a service academy. Yeah, there's just a lot of wonkiness to that first week. Or
self-inflicted wounds, man. I mean, I get why they did it, but you chose to go play in Ireland and you chose to schedule the service academy.
Yeah,
is that
the service academy.
John Curry or Gene Taylor?
What's that?
I think Curry scheduled Army, didn't he? Or
Curry,
maybe I'm wrong.
Probably. They were so scheduled far out. It might have been.
That's a good question.
We'd have to check that because, Curry scheduled games 13, 14 years out when he was the AD, and I can't remember. We find a news release. I know Gene thinks highly of the military academies.
Gene's a lazy guy, so he's probably really.
He wants to kick the shit out of Army then in Manhattan. So, I get like the Army thing. I would have liked to have actually kind of gotten out of that one because it doesn't do you a lot of good. You got to prepare for a system that you're not going to see either, and it presents injury risk with the triple option, et cetera. But
that man, Army might be bad this year, though.
Yeah, I don't think they lost their do-it-all quarterback, right? And a lot
they
of
lost 16 starters.
Yeah, okay. So I'm not necessarily. We'll probably be fine there. It's more so just preparing for that system. Yeah. The Iowa State game, I get it, and John does too. The financial windfall.
Say no at this point. We just talked about the $20 million deficit, right?
Yeah, the financial windfall, but also the branding, the reputation, everything it does for your program, especially if you win the game. Like, I don't know if College Game Day will be in Ireland. I can't remember if they went last year, but like,
it should be.
It will be. Okay. So you're going to be the talk of week 0, and it's probably going to be 2 ranked teams in the preseason top 25 poll playing in Ireland to kick off the season in a series of games that have been played there in week 0 that have, let's be frank, have been dog shit over the last 4 years. This one actually has some hype to it. 2 top 25 teams. Otherwise you had Northwestern, Nebraska, Notre Dame, Navy. In last year you had Georgia Tech, Florida State. Georgia Tech wasn't supposed to be good. Florida State obviously proved to be a disaster. Georgia Tech proved to be much better than that. So a hyped matchup, the talk of the town heading into week 0, the talk of the country. From a brand perspective, if you win, man, is it great.
No, it's huge for Kansas State. The winner of that game is actually in a really good spot. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, if you lose it, I'm going to be in a really dark spot.
Yeah.
Because that's not just losing an opening game of the season and it's losing a conference game.
Well, if we're going to maybe look at what those teams have done early in the year, the Cyclones have been pretty rough under Matt Campbell early.
Yeah. But hey, go check out it. If you're going to Ireland, check out our Holiday Distillery's Irish Farms whiskey, which is made there in Ireland. So shout out to Holiday Distillery. By the way, John, I did have to say, official John Curry on our Discord, shout out to him. He got married this last weekend, and they kicked off the wedding, pre-wedding, with some Ben Holiday bottled and bond bourbon. So they had, he sent me a picture of a bottle that they had on hand and then posted one on the Discord of them drinking it before, I think, the reception, maybe before the wedding. Maybe it got really wild. I don't know.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Love that. Good stuff. Speaking of John Curry, it looks like, from what I can tell with Google, K-State scheduled Army in 2019.
Okay, so Jane scheduled it. So,
yeah.
We just wanted to beat Army. Yeah.
All right.
Yep. All right. Well, good little football chat today. Appreciate our great sponsors like Holiday Distillery, Home Field Apparel as well. Make sure you go support them. Use that promo code 3MA24 for 15% off your first order at Home Field Apparel. Thanks to Nick Springer behind the scenes. Shout out to the Discord community if you want to be a part of that. Patreon.com/3MA. That's Patreon.com/3MA. If you want up to the minute updates on everything that's going on and just be a part of the zaniness that happens there day in, day out. For DY and Cole, I'm John. Thanks for listening to another edition of 3MA. We'll talk to you soon.